What's up, all my movie-loving maniacs? It's your boy Bankful B of the Lassiter Factor, and I want to take a moment to talk about Gone Girl, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary, so let's review. Gone Girl is based on a popular book by Gillian Flynn. It came out in 2012 and got a film adaptation in 2014, 10 years ago. And it is about this married couple, Nick and Amy. We get to see the downfall of the relationship, but also Amy goes missing, and Nick is in the middle and the forefront as to why she is missing. There's a lot of suspicion around him, but then, spoiler alert, Amy, it turns out she's a complete psychopath that planned her own kidnapping just to frame Nick. Now, I remember seeing this in a theater 10 years ago. It was just one of those movies that I was kind of curious about. But the main reason I was curious about this movie was because of Tyler Perry, and this was a movie that he didn't write, direct, or produce, but more on him in a little bit. But I just remember walking out of the theater really loving this movie. It was just blown by how good it was. And 10 years later, I still feel that way. Now, this is a movie I watched last week and would have been part of my weekly rundown segment, but I really wanted to talk more about this movie because there's so much to gush about and so much I love about this movie that it deserved its own video. Now, this movie is directed by David Fincher, who is a well regarded and well respected director. He's given us such great classics like Seven, Zodiac, Fight Club, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, something else like Alien 3. David Fincher does have a way of shooting things and telling stories, and it definitely lends itself to this movie right here. Now, I do like the first half of this movie in which it goes back and forth. It's non-linear. We get to see the early stages of their relationship, but then we also get to see the downfall of the relationship and how both of them are really at fault. And I'll get more into that in a little bit. Screw it, I'll get into it now. Let's be real. Both of these motherfuckers are terrible. In fact, let's play a little game called the movie villain, and the actual villains. But wait, hold on. The other actual villains. Yeah, I'm putting Amy's parents in the mix too, because they do play a part into this. Now, let me just say right off the bat, I do love Ben Affleck in this movie. This movie came out, I guess, a year after. I do remember it came out a year after Argo came out, and it was at the time when Ben Affleck, his directing career was really riding high. He just won an Oscar, and he was just cast as Batman. And then seeing him in this, it was like, okay, this is a solid gig for him, and definitely something to keep him on the forefront in terms of acting, and reminded me like, oh, Ben Affleck can be a good actor. But what I like most about this movie is it's almost relatable to him because, as we all know, Ben Affleck, he's been under a lot of scrutiny and public embarrassment, and he's gotten a lot of fingers pointed to him for a lot of things, and this is a perfect thing for him because his character in the movie, he really is a piece of shit. I mean, yeah, I think he really did love Amy, but at the same time, he cheated on her the first couple of years of the marriage. He got complacent after he lost his job. He moved her to Missouri so that he can take care of his sick mother, which is admirable in itself. But at the same time, he didn't even ask her if she wanted to move there. And then on top of that, he used what was left of her inheritance money to start a bar in Missouri, and he cheated on her in the process. So yeah, Nick is not absolved from criticism, but that doesn't mean she isn't either. What I also like about the movie is the first half of the movie does do a good job of making you empathize with her and like, okay, Nick is doing all these terrible things to her, and she ends up getting kidnapped, and then Nick, all fingers are pointing at him as to why she's disappeared and possibly killed, and even all the evidence from the house being, well, the whole kidnapping was staged, and then all this credit card troubles, money troubles, all these things are basically making a horrible case for him as to maybe he is the one that kidnapped her. But we soon realize, and again, spoiler alert, that Amy is not as innocent as she portrays herself, and the movie really did a good job of, making us empathize with her. But then it turns out she's a complete psychopath that staged her own kidnapping, and it turns out that Nick is not the first person that she ever did this to, which I'll get into in a little bit. But I just like that whole montage where we see her alive and we see her basically plan her own kidnapping, from drawing her own blood and changing herself when she actually does leave town. She accused other men of raping her, and then there's also Desi, played by Neil Patrick Harris, which I'll get into in a little bit. But she had to follow a restraining order against him. But it turns out she's the reason why all those men are either sex offenders or have restraining orders against them. And her parents are really part of the problem because in the movie, well, the book too, her parents produced these books about their daughter Amy, about how every failure she's had as an adolescent, they basically made it a win for her in those books, which are the Amazing Amy books. It's like her parents basically put her on this kind of pedestal that she should be able to live up to, and that just really wasn't fair, and that kind of added to her psyche as to why she's a psychopath, and plus she just loves attention and media scrutiny. So Nick enlists the help of Tyler Perry's character in the movie, who is a lawyer, and this is probably one of my favorite performances from Tyler Perry because he's basically the Johnny Cochran of this movie, which he got his inspiration for this movie from. Well, I love this performance from him because it's not too much. This is the type of movie where he was able to showcase his strengths and hide his weaknesses. And in this movie, he is likable, he's charismatic, as any lawyer could be, and he knows exactly what to do to help Nick. He is helping them every step of the way. We also get Kim Dickens, who is the detective on the case, and she's basically figuring out everything. But then when Amy does come back, she figures it out real quick. I'm like, nah, there's something fishy about this. We got Carrie Coon, who plays the twin sister of Ben Affleck's character Nick in the movie, and she's basically the voice of reason to him. Like, she never liked Amy to begin with, but she's also one to like, no, you really need to take this shit seriously because you're in a whole heap of trouble right now. Neil Patrick Harris, hot off of the finale of How I Met Your Mother at the time when this movie came out, and this is a nice little rebound for him to prove like, oh, I'm more than just a funny guy. I can also do some dramatic acting in here, even though he didn't do that much in this movie. But spoiler alert, he does get killed in the movie. And quick side note, I do think it's just a little bit funny just watching a out and proud gay man try to do a straight sex scene. So many great performances. The movie is shot well. It is a beautiful looking movie. In fact, the best way I can describe this movie is it's probably a big budget Lifetime movie at that. But hey, David Fincher was the one to do the job. But what I love most about this movie is that it also has something to say about how we perceive the media and what we perceive as fact or what is true, and how people present themselves to the public versus how they actually are when the cameras are not rolling and behind closed doors. And I also like the theme of, hey, marriage is hard, but in this movie they take it to a complete extreme because you never really know your significant other. They may want to unalive you. But to me, this is definitely one of those movies that you should definitely not watch with your spouse or girlfriend. And before I end this review, I do want to give glory to Trent Ratner and Atticus Ross, who did the soundtrack for this movie. I love it. It's one of those soundtracks, one of my favorite soundtracks from the past 10 years. And of course, they've recently did the soundtrack for Challengers, and I'm even more excited that they're doing the soundtrack for Tron 3, which comes out next year. But I love the soundtrack for this. It's just basically ambience music. It's unsettling, but it worked for this movie. If you have not seen Gone Girl, I highly recommend it. But like I said, don't watch it with your significant other. But for me, this is definitely top 5 favorite David Fincher films. I'm going to give Gone Girl the hands up emoji because it is a masterpiece. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'm Bankphobia, the Lassiter Factor. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Peace.